The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone who have joined here today for today's Applications Manager training session. At the very outset, let me greet you all a very happy and prosperous new year. I am your presenter for today. My name is Anugrah Benjamin. I hope you can all listen to my voice. If you can, please confirm the same by commenting in the webinar chat panel so we can begin the session as soon as possible. All right, so I'm assuming all of you can listen to my voice and can see the presentation on your screen. We will begin today's session by having a brief outlook about the entire training schedule that is spread across 4 parts, each part covering a specific topic each day. So let me begin by giving you a brief overview about what Applications Manager, the product, actually is. So Applications Manager basically is an agentless monitoring tool that helps you monitor and keep a strong check on the performance of all your business critical applications, servers, virtual machine, cloud apps that run on physical, virtual, or basically your cloud environment. So Application Manager basically ensures that all of your servers are always performing optimally and delivering the maximum performance. So we will begin today's session, which will cover application discovery, wherein you discover applications and then visualize application dependencies with those discovered applications. Further, during the course of this session, we will be seeing how to monitor the apps that run on your physical, virtual, and even your cloud infrastructure. And then in the third week, that is the 7th of February, we will try to explore how to help improve the user experience by analyzing the user interactions throughout a website. And then finally, we will try to help developers in your organization to optimize application performance by sharing some best practices of troubleshooting performance issues and then offering some code level insights so as to facilitate the troubleshooting processes for these developers. So today's agenda will actually begin by covering application discovery, wherein we will actually discover all of the applications running in our network and then try to add them to Applications Manager and get the monitoring done. And then once we have discovered these applications, we will try to understand the relationship between these applications. Obviously, applications in your network interact with each other and exchange information all the time, and it is important to understand what is the relationship between these applications, because the fault in one could in turn impact another application that could severely pose a threat to the overall performance of your organization. And further, we will see what monitor groups are and just how important monitor groups are within the application performance monitoring setup. Now, before I speak more, let me just give you a brief description about some terminologies that we will be using throughout this course. For example, one such thing is a monitor group. Now, before we see what a monitor group is, we will understand what a monitor is. So anything from an application server to a database server to a virtual machine, any monitorable entity in your organization is basically termed as a monitor. So when I use the words monitor or application or servers, I'm basically alluding to the same thing. So once we have covered monitor groups, we will finally be seeing user management, wherein we will find out that there are several roles that can be assigned to various users in your organization depending upon the privileges or access levels that the administrator wants them to have. So that will be today's agenda. Remember, if you have any questions in between the session, please ask your questions through the chat panel. Our experts are live here with me, alongside me. To answer your questions, we will have a brief Q&A session at the end of this training series too. So before we tread ahead, let me introduce you to our protagonists today, Bob and Susan. Now, Bob and Susan, I'm sure we can all relate to Bob and Susan when I say that a typical day in Bob and Susan's life begins with worry, where Bob begins worrying about the well being, the health, and availability of his application servers, his database servers, his virtual machines, his middleware technology, so on. And similarly, on the other hand, Susan, the developmental head, is always worried about various thresholds, alarms, and trying to always troubleshoot critical performance issues that could actually hinder the seamless delivery of services to their end users. And by the end of the day, one can only imagine what goes on in Bob and Susan's head when they are already handling so many different aspects of application performance monitoring. So, we will now tread into the first topic for today, which is ideally the most logical step that you would do once you have installed and started applications manager, and that would be applications discovery. Now I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the capabilities of applications manager. However, there are several attendees today who are still evaluating or are early stage users of applications manager, so we will proceed slowly and try to get maximum information across clearly for everyone. So delving into application discovery. So applications manager basically allows users to discover applications using the conventional techniques of IP range, wherein you actually specify the range of IP addresses within which you want your applications to be discovered. So basically all the devices within that IP range are pinged, and the servers or applications running on those devices are discovered and automatically added within applications manager. Another conventional method would be the classless interdomain routing technique within applications manager. And in case your organization is heavily dependent on huge VMware components, it makes sense to actually discover using the VMware discovery method. So now that we have seen what application discovery, the techniques of discovering applications, well, applications manager does not limit these discovery methods just here. What you could further do is configure ports. Now, what exactly does configuring ports mean? That is, now if you are already aware of the ports where the desired application you are looking for is hosted, all you have to do is simply mention the port number and applications manager will discover it for you almost instantly. Now, ideally, if you try discovering the process, that is, you specify the IP address range, configure the ports, and when you hit on the discover button, you should see a screen that looks something like this one. Now, this is a screenshot which clearly depicts that Applications Manager is currently discovering certain resources which require to be added within the product. Now, once again, if I show you the screenshot right here, if you notice, once the applications are discovered, this is exactly how Applications Manager lists these discovered devices. Now, what is the important point to note here is Applications Manager not just discovers these applications in your network, but it also automatically categorizes these devices based on the monitor type. So imagine if you were to discover a huge range of IP addresses. This example I've used here basically shows just 5 monitors, but when you scale it to maybe 500 monitors, you will see the broader sense in this automatic categorization. Now, then again, now that we have seen how different discovery techniques work, there is actually another way wherein you can add monitors to your product. And that is what we call bulk importing your monitors. Now, I'm sure bulk importing your monitors, the term itself reveals quite a bit of information about the feature. But anyway, from the screenshot, if you observe closely, it says you can actually select the monitor type. Now, this works best when your organization actually utilizes several monitor of similar types. So from this screenshot, if we assume that a typical organization works with a lot of JBoss servers. So what you ideally do is you select the monitor type to be JBoss server, and then you upload the sample CSV file in which you have actually gathered all details about all of your JBoss servers. So when you upload the CSV file and hit the button, you will see that all your JBoss servers have been added to applications manager. Now I know I've been speaking about application discovery, but we have not actually seen how discovery process works in the real time setup. So allow me to take you to the real time setup where we will actually see how application discovery process works. Now follow my cursor while we are on this screen. So if you notice, I am on the screen which says the admin tab. So I have clicked on the admin tab and I have arrived here, and I see this heading right here which says discovery and data collection. However, the third option says add discover, but I'm not going to click it just yet because there is something you have to do prior to actually beginning the discovery, and that is some credential settings. So basically, when you are trying to find different devices, when you try to add those devices to your applications manager, obviously you require credentials for those devices. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to show you how to create a sample credential. Click on the icon right here that says add new credential. And when you see a pop-up like that, so I've just selected credential type to be MySQL. I'm going to name, and I'm going to click on the save button right now. So if you see, here it is. The credential that I have just created has been added. However, I have added several actual credentials for various different monitor types. Now that we have done this, we will now go back to the add discover tab right here. Now this screen basically lists all the different type of monitors supported within applications manager. That is well beyond over 100 different types of monitors. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this discovery tab right here, which will take me to the discovery page. So I'm going to discover some devices now. So that requires me to click on this option right here that says add new, and I have been shown this screen right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a name, say application discovery. I'm going to use the below selected credentials since I've already added certain credentials here. I'm going to use the regular IP range discovery, enter an IP range to run this discovery process. And of course, configure ports. So what I'm going to do here is I know for sure that my Tomcat servers are actually running on these ports. So I'm going to add those port numbers here. So I'm sure that my Tomcat servers will get discovered, and I really do not want to discover my WebSphere servers. So you can actually prevent these from actually getting discovered by disabling the option from here. That's it. Close the window and hit on the discover button, and there you go. The screenshot that we saw in the presentation is exactly the one that is happening right here, right now. Applications manager is trying to discover these different monitors. Now, if you see the screen, it says applications manager is going to ping up to 21 IPs and then add devices and also add the applications that are being hosted on these devices. So while this discovery process completes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to this option right here that says bulk import, so we can actually see for ourselves how bulk importing works in Applications Manager. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the monitor type URLs because I've already created a sample CSV file that I'm going to upload now with all of the details about the URL monitor. So I'm going to choose a file. Here it is, open it and click on next. So if you see here, there are 4 different URL monitors that I've tried to add, and I'm going to click on start discovery. Now this means that these monitors will be discovered and added. Where can I see if these apps have been discovered and added? I click here, view logs, and if you assess this screen carefully, you will see that all 4 of those URL monitors have been added successfully. So I'm just going to close this window right here and go back to the product. So again, now we've seen how bulk import works. Let's go back to discovery and just take a look at all the discovered devices. So if you see here, this is how we saw in the screenshot Applications Manager listing all of the discovered devices and even categorizing them based on the monitor types. And if you see right here, Applications Manager has pinged 15 servers and discovered 13 applications and also added them to the product. Now, I'm sure you have a good idea about what application discovery is and just how it works. So let us just quickly go back to the presentation and continue where we left off from, which is right here. So this brings us to the second topic of today's session, which is dependency mapping. Now, dependency mapping, once again, is a very, very important and crucial feature in any application performance monitoring setup. But before we actually explore dependency mapping, let us try to ask ourselves and understand just why dependency mapping is such a sought after feature in the application performance monitoring sphere. Now, obviously, an aerial view, business view of all of your discovered applications is always a good thing because it actually gives you more power and more control over all of the applications in your network. Now, when I speak about more power and more control of all of your discovered applications, what I'm actually trying to say is it gives you the ability to add, delete, and even edit the relationships between various devices that are working in your setup. While not only this, you can also see the live status of all devices. That is whether they are available and healthy or whether they are running some issues within them. Well, live status helps us identify faulty applications quicker. That is, once you have an aerial view, it becomes easier for you to identify applications with faults. And obviously, once you have identified these issues, the next step would be to diagnose the root cause and then begin troubleshooting. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a perfect representative example of what a dependency map looks like. Here it is. So if you look at your screens right now, I'm sure some of you might actually feel a bit startled because this screenshot kind of seems like packing too much information right now. But of course, we will be seeing it in the real-time setup and you will all realize that it is not as hard as it looks. In fact, it is pretty simple how we arrive at this particular screenshot. So what we are going to do now is actually go back to the real-time setup and see for ourselves how we actually arrived at this kind of a dependency mapping structure. So let me take you back to the build quickly. And here, so this is where we left off in the build. Remember all of our discovered devices being listed. And I know what you are thinking right now. You can see the option clearly above that says view application dependency map. So naturally, that is what we are going to do. We are going to click on this option and see a screen like this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a business service name, say global travel app. I am going to enable this box, which actually gives me the ability to visualize those dependencies. What I am going to do is choose monitors with connection. Of course, you can choose to see all your monitors based on the type. But what I'm going to do now is, since I've already discovered and added certain applications within the product, I'm going to choose monitors with connection, and there they are. So I'm going to select these three and I'm going to hit this button that says proceed to create business service. So scrolling down, this is exactly what we see now I'm sure this looks very close to the map that we just saw in the presentation. However, let me take you back to the presentation again, where let me explain in that image what basically this dependency mapping packs and just how much you can get done with it. So going back to the presentation for a moment, there it is. Now, if you follow my cursor once again, if you will notice that there are basically two different colors that you see on the screen, red and green, and I'm sure all of us are pretty familiar what those colors represent. These red representations actually indicate that there are some faults within these applications, and this one, if you notice here, is basically green, telling us that everything is fine here. And this info card particularly packs a lot of information about the health of all the devices that we can see on our screen right now and their underlying root cause. So we can not only understand that there is an issue, we can actually pinpoint the exact source of that issue. Now, to better understand what dependency mapping or this business view of discovered devices are, let us see the third topic in today's agenda, that is monitor groups. So we will see what monitor groups are now and just what is the need for creating monitor groups in any application performance monitoring environment. So speaking about monitor groups, of course, monitor groups can be created based on business service or geography. Like we just saw an example where I created a business service by the name Global Travel App. So that basically means what I just did moments ago was associate my discovered devices to a business service which I named Global Travel App. Now I could actually create monitor groups based on geography as well. Now, assuming the same business service, Global Travel App, if I were to operate that service from a particular geographical location, I might as well create a monitor group with that geographical location's address. So besides creating a monitor group, you can also create further subdivisions within these groups, that is subgroups, and you can assign ownership to groups. Now, for a moment, let us rewind and think about Bob for a moment. Now, given Bob is the IT administrator and controls his entire organization's activities, IT activities, that is, I mean, he should be pretty overwhelmed with all the information that he is constantly flooded with. But think about it this way: if Bob had several monitor groups and he had owners assigned to different monitor groups, that kind of eases the burden off of Bob. So what he has to do basically is just get updates from the owners about those monitor groups rather than having to chase down individual monitor groups and its underlying monitors in case there are any issues. Now, furthermore, monitor groups allow us to define alarm rules and templates for every group's attributes. Now, what this essentially means is when a single monitor within a particular monitor group fails or exhibits abnormal behavior, you would want to be notified immediately, which is exactly why you can actually configure alarm rules and templates customizable up to the attribute level. So once anything goes wrong, any small component within your monitor group goes wrong, you are immediately informed and can begin your troubleshooting activities instantly. And of course, besides all of this, you can always fetch reports based on monitor groups. Now, these reports could be historical reports giving you an insight into the historical performance data about these monitor groups. But not only that, you can actually analyze these reports to predict the future performance of your monitor groups and then decide, make informed decisions, in fact, to based on the kind of resources that you might be needing or to plan capacity of your network based on the analysis of these reports. Now, monitor groups, we will see soon how a typical monitor group is created and how to work around with monitor groups. But first, we will see what the inside of a monitor group looks like. Now, if you see your screens now, and follow my cursor as I speak, you will notice that we are at the summary tab of a monitor group. And this monitor group basically has certain subgroups. Now, these subgroups, if you notice, there is a subgroup which says domestic tools and another subgroup which says international tools. We just saw in the previous slide that you can actually create subgroups and associate monitors to those subgroups that operate within the large monitor group. And that is exactly what this picture represents. So if you see, the monitor group here is named travel app, and there are two subgroups within it that are named domestic tour and international tours. However, there seems to be an issue with the international tours subgroup. So we see that the health is displayed in red. However, if you see the info card right here, we can find out for ourselves what exactly is causing the health of this subgroup to go down. Now, this actually means that some monitor within the subgroup is actually unhealthy, which in turn reflects in the health of the overall monitor group. Right here, if you see, our overall monitor group is unhealthy, and this is particularly because of one faulty component within a subgroup that, if you notice closely, right here following my cursor, you will see what exactly, in fact, which exactly, where exactly the problem is located. So if you see here, the recent critical alarms give you a quick look at the problems that are existing within this monitor group as a whole. Now think about it. Locating an issue from a monitor group becomes so easy from this single screen and totally eliminates the need to actually hunt for this particular monitor that is housed within the international tours folder and then try to rectify the issue. So it adds a new dimension of convenience to all the users. Now we will see how to create a monitor group. Just a quick look at this image right here where you'll see different fields asking for different kinds of information. So naturally you will have to fill out these fields and then hit the create group button and you should be able to see a monitor group. But then we will try and do it ourselves in the real-time setup and find it for ourselves. So once again, keep your eyes focused on my cursor as I take you here to the top leftmost corner, an option that says new monitor group. Now the new monitor group houses a few options wherein the monitor group option actually is quite simply the monitor group that we have been talking about all this while, the regular monitor group. Now, besides that, there is a web application group, which is, let us say, if you wanted to create a monitor group exclusively for all of your web applications, you would want to choose this option right here. And then again, as we spoke about, a scenario where your organization utilizes large number of VMware components, then you click on the VMware virtual infrastructure and create a monitor group like that. So I'm just going to create a regular monitor group and I'm just going to name it travel agency, and I'm going to give a brief description about it. So if you see here, The owner, the available users are admin, that is by default Bob or the default login. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And if you notice here, there is location. So I'm just going to add any location, say the United States. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit on this button here, create group. Says the travel agency already exists, so I might have to rename the group. So I'm just going to rename the group to say travel and tours. So I'm going to click on United States. That's it. So create group, and there you go. My monitor group is created, but however, there are no monitors associated. So I'm just going to click here, this option. And if you see here, all the discovered devices within my setup are listed here. So I'm going to select a few, say two, and you can filter these monitors based on the monitor type, or if you want to add a new monitor, you could add a new monitor by clicking here. So I've just selected a few, and I'm just going to associate these to my newly created monitor group, which is travel and tools. Says the health is clear. There are three monitors in this, all three of them available and healthy. So naturally the health of the overall monitor group is perfect. We did speak about subgroups, so I'm just going to take you to this option right here, monitor group actions, where we'll create subgroups. So the subgroups could be, say, domestic tours, again, United States or somewhere else, anywhere we want the location to be, and then click on subgroups. Now again, if you notice here, we are on the inside of the subgroup domestic tools. Again, the subgroup here has no real monitors, so we associate a few here too. So I'm just going to associate a few monitors, should be fine. There you go. So if you notice here, I have associated three monitors to this subgroup, two of which seem to be faulty, but there is one which is all right. So overall, if you see the representation, it says the overall health of this subgroup is unhealthy because of the underlying problems we see here. But then again, this is the inside of a subgroup. We will go back again to the monitor group and see the high level view from here. So if you notice here, we are at the summary tab of the monitor group, which houses three monitors and which also has a subgroup saying domestic tools, which then again houses a few more monitors. And then we see the recent critical alarms here. So a lot of information packed in a single screen. And this is exactly the screen that I used the screenshot of in the presentation while we saw a few moments ago. Now, besides this, now let us just see what the interior of a typical monitor looks like. Now, I've associated this Nginx monitor to the monitor group. While I click on the Nginx monitor, you see a lot of data about the Nginx monitor. So the monitor group as a whole gives you a broader view, eliminating the need to actually chase down issues one by one. Then again, we did speak about dependency mapping. Now let us see how dependency mapping makes more sense when we visualize it in this scenario. So I've created a monitor group, I've associated monitors, and now I'm going to click on this button right here that says business view, and we have our dependency map right here. So I'm just going to play around with this dependency map right here. I'm sorry, I'll go back again. This is the monitor group that we created, and here we are at the business view. So you can actually drag and drop them, rearrange them to remove the clutter, make them look easier to understand. All right, so if you see the screen here right now, this one right here is the travel and tools monitor group that we created and the two underlying monitors within it, both of which seem to be healthy as indicated in green. And this one here, domestic tools, is the subgroup that we added within the main monitor group, which again houses three different monitors, two of which seem to be at fault. Now, remember when I said that the dependency view, actually, this particular screen actually packs a lot of abilities and a lot of functions. So if you see here, while I hover over the monitor group, it tells me that I can add new monitors with the button right here. I can delete the monitor group or the monitors from the options here, and I can collect insights about the health and availability of these monitors from here. But that is not it. If you see the option right here that says view settings and click on the display properties, there are a few filters that make activities all the more convenient for you. For example, if you see the option right here which says show only critical monitors. Now, of course, in the example, I have just used a few monitors, say 10 monitors to demonstrate. But imagine an organization of a large scale where typically the monitor counts will be much higher than the representative example I have used. So in cases like that, again, in a whole clutter of mapping where you will have to again find individually all the defective components, you could simply enable this filter right here and choose to see only the critical monitors. So you identify the faulty monitors immediately, hover over and find the root cause of those problems, and then instantly troubleshoot. So I guess now dependency mapping, monitor groups, application discovery, everything has started to make sense for you guys now. So after having completed these, we will now move to the final topic in today's agenda, which is user management. Now, any organization typically will have multiple people assigned different roles depending upon the nature of task that they perform. So applications manager is basically no different in that aspect. So the different types of user roles that you can actually see within applications manager, beginning with, of course, the most obvious administrator, who in our case has to be Bob. So the administrator is basically the king of the castle. What he does is he retains the ability to do anything and everything doable within the product, from creating alarms, associating thresholds, generating reports, to basically anything that you can imagine within the applications manager product. Now, besides the administrator, there is a role that is called the delegated administrator, which functions in the absence of the default administrator, provided the administrator Bob has enabled those privileges for the delegated admin. Then we have the user. Now the user is typically somebody who has read-only access of different modules and does not have the ability to actually make configuration changes in the product. Well, if you want somebody to make those configuration changes, you will have to choose the operator role. Now, the operator typically only has configuration change making access to the modules exclusively assigned to him by the administrator, which means when you create a user role operator and when you try to log in as the operator, you will see that all the other monitor groups, all the other modules are actually not visible to the operator except the one that he has been assigned. And within the assigned module, if the privileges are enabled, he can actually make configuration changes. Now, lastly, we have the role of a manager. Managers are typically the ones who work on the shallow end of monitoring, meaning they do not actually get their hands dirty in the actual application performance monitoring process. In fact, what they do is largely handle high level SLAs. So we will just quickly see how a new user is added within applications manager before I actually show it to you in the real time setup. So you will see a screen like this one where you enter the username, some description, and then choose your passwords. You could upload a profile picture if you want to, but remember to choose the role correctly because that is what the role of this newly created user will be. We'll see a little bit more about user roles before we finally move to the build and see all of these functionalities for ourselves in real time. So what else does user roles have? The user roles has the ability to create several profiles. Now depending upon the license file that you have, you can actually create the number of user profiles. Now remember, when you create a user profile, it gets saved in applications manager. You can delete, edit, or add users anytime. Now, besides profile, there is an interesting feature which is the ability to import users from Active Directory or LDAP. Now, what makes this interesting is just take a look at this image right here. So, Active Directory users are basically imported to Applications Manager and added as users, that too based on the role that you assign while importing. You could assign the role of user, operator, administrator, or manager to these imported users. Better yet is that the Active Directory users can log into Applications Manager with their AD credentials, eliminating the need to use new credentials to log into Applications Manager. Now, besides this, we have user groups. User groups are the equivalent of monitor groups, except you group the users here instead of the monitors. So again, thinking about Bob for a moment, imagine several users working on a common performance issue or perhaps working on a new feature to be developed. Now, Bob wouldn't want to chase individual users and get updates from time to time. Instead, he puts all of those users in a common user group and just tracks the status of the user group to keep himself updated about all of the progress and underlying activities. Lastly, we have account policy, wherein applications manager tries to recommend to our users some strong account policies that they could possibly enforce so as to prevent some unauthorized usage of their data anytime. So we'll just quickly navigate to the real-time setup, and we will basically work our way around the user management module and get try to get all of the things that we discussed here done over there. So, okay, once again, follow my cursor. I'm clicking on the admin tab, and right here under the product settings tab, the third option, if you see, clearly states user management. So by default, Bob, the admin, is right here working on these groups. So basically the admin has access to every monitor group. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a new user. Say I'm going to add a new user, Johnny, and this will be his password. I'm going to assign the role of operator. And remember, when you create a user role, you can actually select the user groups where you want him to be grouped. But since we have not created any user groups, we'll just skip that process for now. However, one important aspect to note when you create a user group is unless you associate the user to a monitor group, he is simply an idle user. So remember to associate the user you are creating with any of the monitor groups, like I am doing here right now, travel and tools. So Johnny, the user who is in the role of an operator, will basically be handling travel and tools group. So when you log in, when Johnny logs in as the operator, what he will see in his screen will be travel and tools monitor group and not the others. So I've created it, and there you go. Johnny is a new user who is operating under the role of an operator. His status is live, and these are the groups that he's working on. So travel and tools and the domestic tour subgroup that has been added right here. Now we did see about importing users from AD or LDAP. So before I actually show you how to import, we will click on this tab right here that says domains to first add a domain from which to import the users. What I have done here is I've already added a domain that I have. So if you see here, this is the domain name that I have given. I'll go back to profiles and click on this option right here, which says import users from AD. selected the domain name, entered a password, and click on fetch users will again bring me to this screenshot right here. So I click on the fetch users screen and you will see the following screenshot right here. One quick movement to the user management tab again, where we will just have a look at the account policies right here. If you see your screens right here, you will see a few recommendations from applications manager so as to ensure that users enforce a strong account policy to prevent the loss of information due to some unauthorized activities. So, well, applications manager makes sure that all of your data is secure by prompting some account policies. And as we have seen today, from the beginning, application discovery, dependency mapping, monitoring groups, and finally user roles, I'm sure you would have had a lot of takeaway from all of the four modules that we have discussed today. If you have had questions, I'm sure we will have them all answered today. So I think we have covered basically everything that we had to in today's agenda. Allow me to sign off right now. Once again, my name is Anugrah Benjamin. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hand over the controls to my panelist for today, Mr. Selvaraj, who will actually assist you with all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, AB. Hello, everyone. This is Selvaraj. From the list of questionnaire, we see there are a lot of interesting questions that has been raised in our chat panel. So we have picked a few of them and we are going to answer it for you. Is it possible to change the default port when using the ADDM? Yes, we do have an option where you can change the default port. Let me quickly show you in the product itself. So when I click on admin tab, discovery, and if I just go ahead and edit any of the already discovered happen, let me just quickly go back and edit it. We have provided the detail of port configuration. So here the default port can be changed. So for example, I'm changing the SNMP from 161 to 162. I can just simply go ahead and tap it. And you need to wait for a couple of seconds so that it will automatically get updated. So it's so easy here, right? Moving to our next question. If I want to discover the same application running on different ports, what setting I need to provide when using ADDM? So for this, again, I'm going back to the product. Here, if you see an example, Apache server, apart from the default port, if I need to provide any customized port that is running in your application, I can just go ahead and provide the port here. Say, for example, 9090, any port, and just leave it for a couple of seconds, and that port can be added here. The next question, how many subgroups can be created under a monitor group? You can create around 6 levels of subgroups within a monitor group. Can we set a dependency within monitor groups? Yes, you can do. You can set one parent to be a dependent monitor group of another. Let me show it in our product quickly. So if I go to the monitor detail page, and if I click on monitor group action, configure alarms, configure health, and I have something called as dependent monitor group tab. So here I can choose another monitor group to be dependent for this group. So either I can select a subgroup or a parent group itself. Do you have an option to trigger alert at monitor group level? This is another question for us. Yes, you do have an option where you can trigger alert of your choice from monitor group itself. So let me just quickly show you, and this will be a broad information that we'll provide in week 2 session. So again, when you go to the monitor group page, configure alarm, I can click on configure health, actions, and under these, once you create an action, for example, email action, the email action will be listed on the left-hand side, and based upon your choice, you can select and move it on the right-hand side. This we will again revisit on our week 2 session. The next question, how can I associate a particular set of group to a user, either with read or with admin rights? So as Ebi was showing you, the status where an operator user can select monitor groups. So same we are going to see now under admin tab, user management. Here, Johnny is the operator. So here we have selected the role as operator and the group as travel and tour. I'm just going to edit and update the password. And update the user. So if you see here, we have Johnny with travel and tour parent monitor group, and under travel and tour there are subgroups which are showing here. I'm going to log out with the with this particular login, and then I'm going to log in with so I'm just making it as simple. And login. So once I see that only travel and tour group is visible for this particular user, let me re-log in with default admin and move on to our next question. Can I associate only subgroup to a read-only user? Yes, very well, you can do that. Let me quickly show you that as well. Similarly, you will need to go and log into the product, click on the admin, user management, same user Bob, and here if you see here, we have selected the parent monitor group, but you have an option where you can expand this and only select the subgroup. So when you re-log in with the user Bob, you will only see the subgroup domestic tour. And the same will be updated here. Moving on to the next question. Do you have an SSO feature, single sign-on feature in Applications Manager? Yes, we do have single sign-on feature that is for Enterprise Edition of Applications Manager. So this SSO feature will be available for admin server, and from there, once you enable the SSO, you will be very well able to log in with the users that you have. Let me just quickly log in to the admin user and admin app manager and show you that. So I've logged into the admin user. This is the centralized console where you can see different managed server or probe configured in your environment. And when I click on the admin tab, I have an option to click on user management, and you have a last tab called as SSO. So once we enable this, this feature will be enabled. This is only available in the Enterprise Edition of Applications Manager. Hope you guys might have few other questions. Pretty much, I would like to, raise question in the chat panel. Our panelist working at the background will help you out in answering those questions. So let's take a quick recap of what we have seen. We have seen how you can do an automatic discovery of Applications Manager, and different monitors and your different applications in your infrastructure. And that can be done automatically, as well as using the bulk import, you can manually add the monitors too. The next we saw monitor groups and its use and different roles in Applications Manager. This is not limited. The next session, the upcoming topics are going to be different monitoring capabilities of your infrastructure, different monitor types, and the metrics that we show in Application Manager, how you can create threshold and templates and apply to them, what are all the available actions that we have, what reports options that we have, and different dashboards that you can make use of. We thank you for your time, and I kindly request you to fill out the survey form, which will pop up to your email or to the window. So just fill out that form and help us out to fine-tune our presentations. Thank you, everybody, once again. You all have a lovely day there.